In the latest episode of The Accused, a father's daughter gets molested and his friends call for justice that's outside the law. But will a court let him go free just because of the crime committed? Starting off, life before everything happened was good for Kendall. He was running a warehouse with about 23 people, including one of his best friends since childhood, Lamar, who has a record, so good for him. And pretty much, Kendall was a beacon of the community alongside his wife Alyssa and his daughter Ingrid, who's about 10 years old. And together they made pretty much a perfect, cute, ideal, put it on a pedestal type of family. However, getting to the second topic, things shifted when Ingrid got molested by a man named Clyde. Once this happened, things changed drastically and rather quickly as well. For unfortunately, on top of Ingrid getting molested because Clyde pulled her pants down and touched her genitals, what also happened is Lamar found out about it, and because Lamar's a big mouth, that means this community that looked up to Kendall, now everybody knew what happened to Ingrid, and that caused a lot of issues because on top of sympathy, that made Kendall very uncomfortable because he wasn't able to protect his child. Now also comes Lamar with his brother David talking about getting street justice because the man assigned to Ingrid's case, Detective Trent Douglas, he's kind of infamous for looking the other way when this young man named Amar Killings was beaten by officers and he didn't say anything. So in Lamar's mind, who is Ingrid, this little black girl who got molested by this white man? She's not going to get justice. So he and David go find the man, and unfortunately they do find him. They bring Kendall because he has the image of what the man's supposed to look like, and those men issue street justice. They whoop Clyde's ass, and just when Clyde is beaten up but still alive, Kendall wants to step back. Lamar decides to step forward and keep beating the man, and he ends up beating the man to death, which leads to the trial and how that happens. Now, originally, Kendall, David, Lamar, who beat Clyde to death, were gonna just say all of them were at the warehouse, and now it's gonna be the alibi. Detective Douglas, he was able to call BS on that, but if the men stayed together, he wouldn't have as much to try to take any of them down until the DNA evidence came up. But unfortunately for Kendall, Lamar decides that because he doesn't fully trust Kendall, he's gonna snitch, and on top of that, he's gonna have his brother corroborate his story, and with that, those two team together to make Kendall the person who killed Clyde. And unfortunately, because they're two eyewitnesses, because they were there and also whooping ass, it makes Kendall look guilty. And what doesn't help is that when Kendall is forced to listen to all this, he decides to say in the courtroom before the judge that not only is Kendall a liar, but not only is Lamar a liar, but he will also kill Lamar. And with that, his fate seems to be sealed. We don't hear that he's guilty or he's going to life in prison or maybe getting a death penalty or anything like that. But what we do know is that things aren't looking good. And at this point, the only hope for Kendall getting out, or even a reduced sentence, is Detective Douglas finding some type of information, whether it's evidence of Kendall not landing the last blow, or for example, Clyde was calling somebody, maybe them hearing something, who knows. Long story short, Kendall's going down unless Detective Douglas finds some type of evidence so that it makes him seem to not be the final party who killed Clyde. We're left to assume that things are going to be good for Kendall, and he'll probably see his daughter when she's old enough to get married, getting out of college, or who knows, maybe even longer than that. So the first highlight for us is that we're given a very real situation and shown a consequence that maybe a lot of people aren't thinking about when they're thinking about doing some type of street justice or being a knight in shining armor when it comes to the aftermath of something happening to their kid. Because I think a lot of people, men especially, they have this idea in mind if something happens to their kid, especially their daughter, they're going to hurt or possibly kill the perpetrator. And what I don't think a lot of people think about is all the occasions where if you go to court, the jury would be on your side and let you go. Absolutely. But at the same time, that's not guaranteed. And you could very much end up being an additional trauma to your child because due to you not letting the law do their thing, this meant that you have to go to jail. And unfortunately, when it comes to this episode, we don't see the cascading effects of Kendall going to jail. We just are left with assumptions. For example, because Kendall goes to jail, now Alyssa's a single parent for the next 5, 10, 20, who knows however long Kendall got sentenced for. And on top of that, there's also the question of now with Kendall not having a job and him having a record, how is Alyssa supposed to pay the mortgage on her own, taxes, and from what it seems, Ingrid went to a private school, so now she has to handle that financial issue as well. And just so much additional problems caused by him doing what he did, even if his heart was in the right place, that I think a lot of people who definitely are prone to getting in their feelings and doing things that are a bit drastic, this is a good way of showing you, hey, control your emotions. Yes, they're very much valid, but think about the long term, not just that short term that short term, what is it called? That short-term cathartic release. The second highlight for us is that in the episode, it makes it very clear that the hiring of black cops doesn't necessarily better the relationships between cops and black people. Especially when it comes to black men, it's not really going to change anything because, as we saw with Detective Douglas, unless that cop's going to be very proactive and like an advocate, they could easily do as cops have done for a very long time, and that is when something happens, either as we saw with Tyree Nichols, they're going to join in, or else, like Detective Douglas, they'll turn away. So, yes, it's an idea that makes sense in some ways, but like a lot of things when it comes to diversity with any type of authority or political situation, having representation matters, but at the same time, unless it's going to be representation that's actually meaningful, it's just pretty much changing the colors of who's going to be the perpetrator. Overall, it's a very timely episode of Accused, which shows that justice is very much complicated and is not routinely served.